Barking's a really common problem. And the hard part about addressing barking is that there's a lot of different reasons why a dog can bark. Oftentimes barking is a stress reliever. So when a dog is nervous, he can bark. When a dog is excited, he can bark. And you can think of it as somebody chewing their fingernails or twirling their hair. Oftentimes it just becomes like this involuntary behavior. Dog sees something that excites him and a bark comes out. Dog gets a little nervous and a bark comes out. And there's so many different motivators that each scenario can have a different answer. So it's really hard to say like, oh, this problem, we can fix it this way. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of bark collars, because it doesn't really address the reason why the dog's barking. So if the dog barks one time because he hears a strange noise, and then the next time he barks because he's excited, it's the same solution to that problem. And it's not good in my opinion, right? But there are certain scenarios where, worst comes to worst, when people are going to be getting kicked out of their home, things like that, where sometimes some of those tools might be recommended. But for me, the first thing that I want to do is I want to try to figure out why my dog is barking in certain scenarios and how to address those, and hopefully solve that in a better way mentally for the dog. So for me personally, dogs that have a lot of energy, I want to make sure that we're meeting those energy needs. We're throwing balls for them, we're getting them out, we're taking them for walks, we're doing whatever we can to expend that energy. We're giving the dog the proper kind of toys. And dog daycare is an option, hiring a dog walker is an option. So there's all these options nowadays. There's even toys that the dog can interact with by himself. So there's all these different options for us to use to find a solution for a lot of those problems. But we want to make sure we're getting our dog's energy needs met. And that's mainly for those energetic dogs, but it can also help for those dogs that stress pretty easy too. Making sure that energy needs met, and then you're not so likely to be jumpy at every little noise. Dogs that do have some insecurity, a lot of times exposing the dog to the world. And then we've talked a little bit about like the socialization in this course, which we go into like neutralization. So we want the dog to be neutral to a lot of different things. If I have a dog that's a little skittish, I really try to show the dog the world and neutralize the dog to the world. So I take the dog out, we feed it treats anytime it sees something weird. I try to get the dog to ignore noises. So for an example, we play fetch, and as we're playing fetch, there's some noises going on. They make some different CDs and things like that, where you can play fireworks and gunshots and things like that, to where the dog can learn how to handle those noises. There's different training programs for that, where you can have you start with a low volume and you work your way up to a higher volume over a progression of days. For me personally, I just want to make sure that if I do have a dog that's a little bit nervous, that barking might be a result of that. So I'm going to ignore the barking for now, and I'm going to work on building the dog's confidence. And ideally, once I get to a point where the dog is pretty comfortable, he's not so skittish, there's not so many crazy things, I'm going to, if there's still barking there, I'm going to address that, right? But for right now, it's kind of getting the confidence and getting comfortable with that first. And once we have the dog comfortable, ideally that nervous barking is going to go away a little bit. So neutralization helps out a lot in that kind of scenario. Taking the dog out, basically distracting the dog and allowing the world to be going on around it. And that can help with a lot of different scenarios. In the home, I think, especially with a new dog, they're going to be hearing a lot of new noises and seeing a lot of new things. That barking might come when they hear the doorbell ring for the first time. They hear somebody walk by, if you happen to live close to somebody, or you have somebody living upstairs and they hear somebody walking around in the house. So over time, a lot of that can settle down once they get used to and comfortable to those noises. In the meantime, I typically try to leave like a radio on, a TV on, something that can kind of drown out that noise a little bit, and I make sure we're giving the dog something to do, something to chew on, something to work on. When I have a dog that's a little reactive, when the barking comes out that way, so if I take my dog for a walk down the street and it sees another dog and it wants to bark at him, or it sees kids playing or bicycles, or if somebody approaches me and my dog barks at him, I go right back into that neutralization training where I feed my dog. So I can take my dog out before a meal or whatever, and I know my dog's a little hungry. I have some treats that I think the dog really likes, and we go out into the world. And I show these dogs these scenarios. Somebody approaches me and I feed my dog. They back off and so the food goes away. A dog's walking by, I feed my dog. Dog goes past, the food goes away. And I want to kind of get my dog to that point where it basically associates, hey, when people approach us, when dogs are walking by, good things happen, and they happen from my owner. Number one, it can make the dog a lot more comfortable in this scenario. So now the dog sees another dog walking up, and my dog starts wagging his tail and he looks at me versus barking. And then once we get to that point where the dog gets comfortable, fading away from the food and things like that can be pretty easy, but just kind of getting that initial reaction done.